The fire was still burning when Jenny Sodder realized something was wrong, not because of the flames, but because of the silence. She stood barefoot in the cold, watching her house collapse in on itself. Sparks rose into the night sky. Smoke rolled across the hillside. Neighbors shouted. Someone cried out her name. And yet upstairs, where 5 of her children should have been screaming, there was nothing. No voices, no movement, no sound at all. As the fire weakened, people began to search. They expected panic, confusion, tragedy made visible. What they found instead was absence. The fire was already losing its strength when the first neighbors reached the Sodder home. Flames still moved along the broken beams, slow and uneven now, as if the house itself was exhaling its final breath. Smoke rose into the winter sky and settled over the hillside, carrying the smell of burned wood, scorched fabric, and something far heavier. Something that stayed with the people standing there long after the fire was gone. 5 children were missing. Not injured, not trapped. Gone. At first, no one said it out loud. They searched instead. Through ash, through collapsed rooms, through what remained of the upstairs where the children had gone to sleep just hours earlier. Everyone expected the same thing, that the fire would have left something behind. Bones, fragments, proof. But there was nothing, no remains, no trace that 5 bodies had ever been inside the house when it burned. By morning, the flames were gone. And by morning, the explanation had already settled into place. The children had died in the fire. The case was considered closed, but standing in the ashes, staring at the empty space where bedrooms once stood, the question refused to fade. How does a house fire erase 5 children completely? Before that night, the Sodder household was rarely quiet. It was filled with the ordinary chaos of a large family, voices overlapping, footsteps on wooden floors, doors opening and closing without warning. Children moved freely through the house, calling to one another, arguing, laughing, filling the space with life. George and Jenny Sodder had built that life deliberately. Immigrants who had worked their way into stability, they raised 10 children just outside the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia. The house was modest, but it was solid, paid for, familiar. Money was not abundant, but it was steady. George ran a trucking business. Jenny kept the household running. The children attended school, helped with chores, followed routines that rarely changed. December had arrived quietly. Christmas had just passed. Wrapping paper still lingered in corners. New toys sat where children had dropped them before bed. The night carried the soft exhaustion that follows a holiday. Nothing dramatic, nothing tense. There were no arguments, no threats, no sense of danger. The older children stayed awake longer than usual. The younger ones were sent upstairs to sleep. George checked the doors before turning in, just as he always did. Everything felt normal. So normal that no one noticed the moment when that normality slipped away. Sometime after midnight, the phone rang. Jenny answered, half asleep. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman she did not recognize. The questions were strange. Names Jenny didn't know, laughter that lingered too long. When Jenny said she had the wrong number, the woman laughed again and hung up. Minutes passed. Then Jenny noticed a glow. Smoke followed. The house was on fire. George ran outside, instinct taking over. His first thought was the ladder, the one he always kept leaning against the side of the house, the one he used whenever repairs were needed. It was gone. He turned to his trucks, parked just yards away. Neither would start. He tried again and again. Every familiar escape failed at once. Neighbors later described the fire as unusually fast. Flames climbed the structure with a speed that left no room for hesitation. By the time help was called, the house was already collapsing inward. 5 children were unaccounted for. The fire burned itself out in less than an hour, too quickly. The following day, authorities offered certainty. The children had died in the fire. The heat was intense enough to destroy their bodies completely. There was no need for further searching. To the community, the explanation felt grim, but final. Funerals were held without coffins. Condolences were offered. Life began, slowly, to move on. George and Jenny did not. They had lived in that house for years. They knew how fires behaved, and they knew what fires left behind. The first theory rested entirely on heat, that the fire burned so hot, so completely, that nothing survived. Some experts supported this. Others quietly disagreed. House fires do not reach the temperatures required to destroy every trace of a human body. Bones remain, teeth remain. Even in extreme cases, something is found. At the Sodder home, there was nothing. No bone fragments, no teeth, no evidence that 5 children had perished there at all. Another explanation shifted focus away from the fire. Witnesses came forward. Some claimed they saw figures near the house that night. Others reported seeing children matching the Sodders' descriptions in nearby towns days later. A car was reportedly seen parked along the road as the fire burned. The idea of abduction took hold, that the fire was not the cause, but the cover. Yet evidence was scattered. Memories conflicted. Leads dissolved over time. Years passed. Still, no remains were ever recovered. The quietest theory offered no villain and no resolution. That the investigation itself failed. That evidence was mishandled or ignored. That assumptions replaced questions. That urgency to close the case mattered more than certainty. If that was true, then whatever happened that night vanished, not in flames, but in silence. George and Jenny refused to let that silence settle. They searched for decades, followed rumors, spoke to strangers, posted billboards with the faces of their missing children, offering rewards, asking questions no one could answer. Time passed. The surviving children grew older. George and Jenny grew tired, but they never stopped waiting. Today, the Sodder children remain officially dead, and yet no proof of their deaths has ever been found. Only unanswered questions. Only absence. And the kind of silence that does not fade with time, but deepens. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They linger. If you want to explore more stories like this, stories history never finished telling, you can find them here. And if you choose to subscribe, you're not joining for answers, only for the echoes left behind.